Welcome to today's session. I'm Melissa Farrell. I serve as the state coordinator of the Homeless Education Program here in Kentucky, and we're going to focus today's video on the transportation-related requirements of the McKinney-Vento Act. During today's session, we're going to take a look at the reasons why the McKinney-Vento Act matters, school of origin rights, collaborating with your local liaison, neighboring districts, parents, and students, which include unaccompanied homeless youth, and lastly, funding McKinney-Vento transportation requirements. Changing schools may greatly impede the academic achievement and social development of students experiencing homelessness. Research studies have demonstrated a link between high mobility due to homelessness and poor school performance. Students who transfer to a new school often experience educational discontinuity and, as a result, lose academic credits. Moreover, the mobility experienced by these students separates them from their social network and from teachers and school staff who know their academic strengths and weaknesses. Coupled with the distress caused by the loss of housing and the economic strain that often accompanies this, changing schools puts students in homeless situations at risk of academic failure. Students who are chronically absent are at serious risk of falling behind in school. Yet for too long, this crisis in our nation's public elementary and secondary schools has not been fully understood. Now, under the Every Student Succeeds Act, many states are reporting chronic absenteeism data annually. Children who are chronically absent in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade are much less likely to read at grade level by the third grade. Students who cannot read at grade level by the end of third grade are 4 times more likely than proficient readers to drop out of high school. High school dropout, which chronically absent students are more likely to experience, has been linked to poor outcomes later in life, from poverty and diminished health to involvement in the criminal justice system. Identifying students experiencing homelessness matters because they are one of the most at-risk populations. Many homeless students have layers of circumstances that impede their learning and success. Many of them experience trauma. Many are not only homeless but also have an IEP. Students with disabilities are the largest subpopulation within the homeless category. Many are highly mobile, which makes keeping them in their school of origin so important. School can be a stabilizing force for many students who are experiencing upheaval and turmoil in their personal lives. We'll talk more about collaborating with parents and unaccompanied homeless youth later in the presentation. So who are they? Section 725 of the McKinney-Vento Act, as amended by the ESSA, defines homeless children and youth as children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. The key to determining eligibility is the living situation, and in the case of doubled up, the reason for the living situation. Since every case is different and we can't give blanket eligibility, McKinney-Vento eligibility determination requires a case-by-case review. For example, you can't say that everyone in a particular trailer lot is homeless. In order to be considered as living in a homeless situation as defined by the McKinney-Vento Act, one of the 3 requirements is not met. If a living situation is fixed, regular, and adequate, then it is not a homeless situation. Children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence include children and youth who have a primary nighttime residence that is a public or private space not designated for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation for human beings. They are also kids who live in cars, parks, public spaces, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations, or similar settings. It also includes migratory children who qualify as homeless because they're living in circumstances described within the definition. The term unaccompanied youth includes a homeless child or youth not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. For any child or youth, including an unaccompanied child or youth, to be eligible for McKinney-Vento services, his or her living arrangement must meet the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless. A guardianship issue alone without homelessness does not convey McKinney-Vento eligibility. We get these questions frequently concerning guardianship and homelessness. For example, what if the child is living with grandparents, with or without guardianship? And we have to remember that homelessness is based upon the three factors in the McKinney-Vento Act definition of homeless. So ask yourself, was this a result of financial hardship or an emergency disaster? Also, the DPP manual outlines guidelines for enrollment based on who has charge of the student. Under the McKinney-Vento law, districts must provide transportation to and from the school of origin if it's in the child's best interest. Local homeless program liaisons or coordinators need to collaborate with food and transportation services, FRISC, counselors, Title I coordinators, shelters, and other local agencies. Districts also need to examine policies related to enrollment and transportation policies to ensure barriers are identified and addressed. And also, staff across the district should engage in professional development to learn the signs and services related to homelessness. Transportation is one of the biggest barriers to regular school attendance and school stability for students experiencing homelessness. Some districts struggle to meet the McKinney-Vento requirements for transporting homeless students, so it's imperative that your district has policies and procedures for handling any transportation-related issues of McKinney-Vento students. Districts should presume that the school of origin is in the best interest of the child, unless otherwise stated by the parent or the unaccompanied homeless youth. You need to always consider student-centered factors such as the impact of mobility, the student's age, and also the distance from the school, just to name a few. The school of origin functions really haven't changed. You'll see on this slide some recent language under ESSA that went into effect October 1st, 2016. Most of this language here has been in the U.S. Department of Ed guidance for over a decade, so most of it may not seem new to you or change any of your procedures. The school of origin has always been defined as the school that a child or youth attended when permanently housed, or the school in which the child or youth was last enrolled, including a preschool. When a child or youth completes the final grade served by the school of origin, the school of origin includes the designated receiving school at the next grade level for all feeder schools, such as when an elementary school feeds into a middle school. There's no time frame on homelessness. Eligibility determination should be reviewed annually at the beginning of the school year by your district homeless program coordinator. Once a child is marked homeless during the school year, they have rights under the McKinney-Vento Act until the end of the school year, even if they become permanently housed during the school year. So that means that the student has the right to attend the school of origin for the duration of homelessness. Transportation must be provided to and from the school of origin at the request of the parent or guardian, or in the case of an unaccompanied homeless youth, at the request of the local liaison. Based on the amended definition of school of origin under ESSA, school of origin transportation rights extend to public preschools and receiving schools. LEAs must continue to provide transportation to and from the school of origin to formerly homeless students who have become permanently housed for the remainder of the academic year during which the child or youth becomes permanently housed. The intent of the McKinney-Vento Act is to remove barriers to educational access and success for children and youth experiencing homelessness. According to the Act, state educational agencies and districts must review and take steps to revise any law, regulation, practice, or policy that may act as a barrier to the identification of, or the enrollment, attendance, or success in school of homeless children and youth. Districts must arrange transportation without delay. Transportation arrangements should ensure that a homeless student is able to participate for the full school day, neither arriving late nor leaving before the school day has ended. The law also requires districts to coordinate transportation services with other LEAs. Such coordination ensures that each district understands its responsibility in minimizing educational disruption for a student experiencing homelessness that may be caused by the lack of transportation. The McKinney-Vento Act requires schools to immediately enroll homeless students, with enrollment defined as attending classes and participating fully in school activities. Therefore, districts must arrange transportation without delay. Transportation arrangements should ensure that a homeless student is able to participate in the full school day. With ongoing communication and a clear delineation of responsibilities, districts can develop effective transportation policies and practices. The law requires the state and the districts in the state to adopt policies and practices to ensure that transportation to and from the school of origin is provided upon request. If the LEA determines that it's in the student's best interest to continue his or her education in the school of origin, then the district must provide or arrange transportation to and from the school of origin at the request of the parent or guardian, or in the case of an unaccompanied homeless youth, at the request of the local liaison. For more information about school selection and determining a student's best interest, download NCHE's School Selection Brief. LEAs make the final decision on the mode of transportation. Parents and unaccompanied homeless youth have a right to transportation, but not to dictate the type of transportation. The strategies list for rural school districts is a resource for your district homeless coordinator to be familiar with and to use when planning transportation options for students experiencing homelessness. Keep in mind that transportation needs to be arranged immediately. So having this discussion ahead of time and having a process for collaborating eliminates confusion and conflicts. Conversation should be taking place regarding the best interest of the student over transportation to the school of origin. If the child or youth lives and attends school within the same district, that district must provide or arrange transportation. If the child or youth lives and attends in different districts, the districts must agree on how to split the responsibility and cost of transportation or share them equally. Some public transportation systems donate bus passes or other transportation services, so it's a good idea to establish relationships with community agencies. Many students experiencing homelessness cross district, county, and even state lines when traveling between temporary living arrangements and school. As such, coordination between districts is required in cases of inter-district transportation. As noted, in cases where it's determined to be in a student's best interest to attend the school of origin, but the student is living in another LEA, the district of origin and the district in which the student is living must agree upon a method or apportion the responsibility and cost of providing transportation to and from the school of origin. If the districts are unable to reach an agreement, the responsibility and cost for transportation must be shared equally. Parents who are experiencing homelessness appreciate being included in decisions involving the education of their children and should be a part of the conversation on developing any plans for transporting their children to and from the school of origin. Moreover, parents should be provided with clear expectations for their role in carrying out the plan, such as committing to getting their children to a bus stop on time, notifying the transportation department when a child will not be attending school to prevent unnecessary trips, or following procedures for utilizing gas vouchers. In some instances, districts will develop a written transportation agreement between the district and the parent that is helpful in holding all parties accountable. Some districts use a written agreement that spells out the district's responsibilities and the parent's responsibilities. This is useful to holding all parties accountable. According to the U.S. Department of Ed's Education for Homeless Children and Youth Program non-regulatory guidance, based on the best interest of the student and in consultation with the parent, the district ultimately determines the mode of transportation. While many options exist for transporting homeless students, the mode the district selects must align with the state and district pupil transportation policies and safety standards and must not create a barrier to the student arriving to school on time or cause an undue burden on the parents or the student. The McKinney-Vento Act further emphasizes that homeless students must not face barriers to accessing extracurricular activities. Therefore, to the extent that lack of access to transportation is a barrier to extracurricular activities for a particular student, a district would be required to provide this student with transportation to or from extracurricular activities. The mode of transportation should not stigmatize a homeless student or betray the confidentiality of his or her living arrangement. Bus routes, for example, should be arranged such that students staying in homeless shelters can be picked up and dropped off in such a way as not to reveal their place of temporary residence. District transportation or general funds to provide transportation for homeless students is an acceptable and often necessary option. Districts that receive a McKinney-Vento subgrant may use these funds to defray the excess cost of providing transportation to students experiencing homelessness. Funds reserved for homeless students under Title I Part A may be used to provide children and youth experiencing homelessness with services not ordinarily provided to other students, including transportation to and from the school of origin. Providing transportation for students experiencing homelessness eliminates the most often cited barrier to their school enrollment and regular attendance. By establishing transportation plans and collaborative agreements prior to the need for transportation, districts ensure that transportation for McKinney-Vento students is provided in a prompt and effective manner. You can send any questions to Melissa Farrell, State Coordinator for the Homeless Education Program, or collaborate with your local district homeless program coordinator.